Hey, Dog Nation, welcome into Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. My name is Brandon Adams, and this has really turned out to be one of my favorite things to do during the week. We hang out with our buddy Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews. Of course, you'll hear from Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel. Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers have a chance to weigh in. Our buddy Connor Riley here in Studio 2. What we do is we take a look at the big games for the upcoming week. We kind of share our thoughts on it, and that forms a consensus, and then you playing along at home, Dari Payro here with us as a part of the show each week, decides, do you want to go with the flow? In other words, do you want to put your money and your opinion alongside the rest of the Dog Nation experts and the Dog Nation daily listener and viewer audience? Of course, it's all, as I said before, brought to you by our friends at R.S. Andrews. And speaking of going with the flow, whether it be this time of year where it's hot weather outside, you want the flow of air conditioning to be nice and cool in your house on the inside, or the water coming out of your shower, all those systems in your house, you know, R.S. Andrews, experts when it comes to fixing that kind of stuff, getting it back to factory fresh specs. So whether it be heating, air, plumbing, electric, all of those things, R.S. Andrews will show up on time. They'll do the work that's promised for the price that's promised. It's one of the reasons why for a long time now, Dog Nation's been recommending R.S. Andrews. We plan on keeping on doing that for a long time to come, too. Now, as we said before, Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews is with us. Dari, as I bring you in here, we take a look at our record for last week. I'm going to say that maybe your vacation in Italy distracted you a little bit from your handicapping after being pretty hot through a couple of weeks. You fell off the pace a little bit a week ago, 3-5 on the week. You still have the lead on Connor and me for the season, though. You're 12-13. A 4-4 week puts me at 10-15 for the year. Connor, a 5-3 week, also puts him at 10-15 for the year. So Connor and I both looking to rally here a little bit. You looking to get back to your winning ways. So was it a distraction last week? Too much Italian food? Too much of the, I don't even know what it was you were eating and drinking over there, but maybe a little too much to distract you from the handicapping card?
Oh, most definitely. I'll play that card. Lots of wine, lots of food, completely distracted.
Well, listen, that's a good thing to be distracted from. Certainly a great vacation, but it's great to have you back here today. And obviously, we're going to talk a lot about the big games and a ton on Georgia Notre Dame as well. A very interesting point spread and a very interesting consensus of opinion starting to form on that a little bit. In fact, here on Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews, why don't we start right there? Georgia hosting Notre Dame on Saturday as a 14-point favorite. Boy, a lot of talk about that this week. Is that too big of a number for Georgia to cover? Let me start with Dog Nation's Mike Griffith. Mike, what do you have to say about that?
You got to go way back. You have Notre Dame and College Game Day. It's the first matchup of top 10 non-conference teams in Sanford Stadium since 1966. Long time since Georgia has played two top 10 teams playing, and one of them not in the SEC, and Georgia's going to lay it on the Irish. It's going to be 45-17. Georgia covers this spread easily. 14 points. It's all about public perception.
So you hear a very confident Mike Griffith emphatically taking the Dogs, minus the 14 against Notre Dame. Dog Nation's recruiting insider Jeff Sintel, what say you?
Ooh, big line. I think a bigger win for the Bulldogs. I like Georgia in spite of the 14 points for Notre Dame.
So Jeff Sintel all over the Georgia Bulldogs there as well. Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, I have a feeling, I think I know where this one's going to go. 96% of the audience takes Georgia here. We talked about this on Dog Nation Daily today. Everybody all over the Dogs thus far, minus the 14 points. Connor Riley, I'll invite you into this discussion. Is it too much? Is it too much talk for Georgia? Is there just too much build-up for the home favorite in this regard? What do you think?
I don't. I do think this Notre Dame team is pretty good. I just think the problem is Georgia's just a terrible matchup for them. You know, they're very young and inexperienced, sort of up the spine of that defense with their defensive tackles and linebackers. And Georgia's just going to run the ball all day. I think it's going to be very similar to that 2012 national title game between Alabama and Georgia. I don't think they're sweating much come the fourth quarter with this one. I don't even necessarily know if the backdoor cover is going to be open for Notre Dame.
Yeah, you know, Dari, my take on this, it's pretty similar to Connor's. This is just the fifth time since Brian Kelly's been head coach. They've been a double-digit underdog. But if you look at a lot of these games, now admittedly they did beat Oklahoma as a double-digit dog back in 2012, but that's not a program that recruits at the same caliber this Georgia team does right now. This Georgia team looks a whole lot more like the Alabama team that was a 10-point favorite in 2012, but won in blowout fashion. The Clemson team from a year ago that was a double-digit favorite ended up winning, 30-3 was the final score there. USC in about 2016, I think the year was also blew out Notre Dame in a similar spot. Notre Dame's not a double-digit dog much, but when they are, something's typically up. And, Dari, I think something's up here. Since Kirby Smart's been at Georgia, recruiting classes have been number 6, number 1, number 3, number 2. For Notre Dame, though, it's bottom part of the top 10. There's a huge talent disparity here, the likes of which that Notre Dame just doesn't see much. But when it does see it, it usually gets blown out. I do think Notre Dame gets blown out on Saturday as well. I think the 14 points is easy for Georgia to cover. A strong consensus here. Are you going to go with the flow?
Hey, man, this would make it 5 out of 5, right?
Yep.
That's tough. I'm actually not. I'm going to take the 14 points to Notre Dame. I think Georgia's going to win this game, but both of these teams have great offensive lines. And I think it's going to be more of a clock control type of game. I think Georgia will have to lead the whole game, but I think Notre Dame's barely going to cover this game.
I think you're a little bit like me in that just hearing 5 entities, whether it be, us, the Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, to hear that many people in the national media a lot of ways is going to be the same way. You're kind of like me that sort of immediately makes you suspicious. Your radar kind of goes up when too many people are on one side. And, Dar, you know the story here. In addition to trying to provide some analysis on this, I'm also a fan, and admittedly it makes me a little nervous for my favorite team to know that so many people are this sure that Georgia's going to win easily against Notre Dame. It sounds like you're kind of the same mindset, at least in terms of your instincts. When so many people are sure about one thing, something about that doesn't quite seem right. Am I characterizing your opinion fairly?
Yeah, and I just think Notre Dame's really going to try to shorten the game by running the ball and trying to put the clock more of a field position defensive type of game. I would love nothing more than Georgia to win by 4 touchdowns and make this like a national safety game. I just think it's going to be a shortened game, because they're both going to establish the run.
Yeah, I think that's actually probably a pretty good point, that these two coaches, knowing the talent disparity, they may coach with that in mind. Kirby Smart trying to avoid mistakes, Brian Kelly trying to keep it close from the standpoint that a mistake by a quarterback or a young player could maximize Notre Dame's opportunity. It's worth paying attention to. We're off and running here on Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. As I said before, you can catch up with R.S. Andrews online at rsandrews.com. Air, heating, plumbing, electric. You can trust our friends at R.S. Andrews to do great work for you, and you can find out more at rsandrews.com. The first slate of games not involving Georgia. Let's talk a little bit about Tennessee traveling to Florida. Florida slipped past Kentucky last week in what may have been among the games of the weekend. Tennessee finally got a win against Chattanooga, but for the most part, things are not great right now on Rocky Top. But in Gainesville this week, do things change? Mike Griffith, start us off. Your thoughts on the Vols and the Gators.
Here's my upset special of the week. Go ahead, pin the tail on me right now. I'm buying Tennessee at Florida to upset the Gators straight up.
So Mike likes Tennessee there in an upset situation, even calling them the outright winner. Pretty interesting there for Mike on that. Jeff Sintel, what do you have to say?
Really tough call there. You think Pruitt and Vols will D up the Gators, especially with a second-team quarterback? I'm going to take the points there. I think Tennessee will beat that spread.
Interesting that both of our writers calling for the upset here. A lot of times writers have a tendency to take favorites, but both Jeff and Mike like Tennessee on this side of things. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, now they don't like either side of this, but maybe not a surprise that 64% of the audience, after seeing Tennessee lose to Georgia State, are going to take the Florida Gators here. I think our audience is on the wrong side of this one, though. Connor Riley, your opinion?
I would stay away from this at all costs, just because this line is really weird to me. A week ago I came on here and said there was just something really fishy about this Kentucky-Florida line. Kentucky was going up there with a second-string quarterback. Florida wasn't a double-digit favorite. This week, Florida's playing a backup quarterback at home. Tennessee got a nice feel-good win a week ago, and yet Florida is a double-digit favorite here over Tennessee. Something here just for me just doesn't pass the smell test here. Sort of a rivalry game. I kind of like Florida in this spot.
Wow.
For no reason other than this line shouldn't be 14 points, and maybe Vegas knows something here.
So this, for me, is an aggressive play for me because obviously now for months I've been saying that I'm down on Florida overall, and this is one of those spots where I think you have a tendency to bet against Florida and reap the benefit. Does Tennessee win outright? I don't know, but I don't like Florida. Now, the numbers here don't argue much for Tennessee. Vols 1-4 against the spread in their last 5, 1-13 in their last 14 straight up against Florida, 5-10 against the spread in their last 15 SEC games. So not only is Tennessee not winning very much, they're not even playing these games very close. But I think this game on Saturday comes down to this, that Florida is just by virtue of its ranking an overrated team. And being a top 10 team, or at one point in time a top 10 team in the AP poll, gives you a little bit of cachet that bettors pay attention to. But in this case, that's kind of fake juice. It's wrong. This is not what Florida is. I think Kyle Trask, who Gators fans believe in erroneously, after all, this was a guy that didn't even start for his team in high school. I think he gets outplayed on Saturday by Jarrett Garantano, the Tennessee quarterback. Our buddy Christopher Smith, former colleague, had a good number on Garantano this week. That since the beginning of last season, he's 63% for his completion percentage. He's 7.9 yards per attempt, 19 touchdowns against just 5 interceptions. That's not going to light the world on fire. That's not an all-SEC performance. But that's enough to outplay Trask on Saturday. And, Daria, I believe that's enough to keep Tennessee close against Florida. I think the Vols, for me, are actually a pretty strong play. I'm going to join the consensus and take Tennessee plus the 14. Are you going to go with the flow?
Yeah, 14 seems like a lot of points to cover, but I'm kind of on the mindset with Connor. I think Vegas is kind of saying something with the spread being that high and Florida coming off such a close game. Just so you know, Florida has won 13 of its last 14 in its series against Tennessee. And Tennessee's offensive line hasn't really been that good so far. So Florida should get a lot of pressures and a lot of sacks in this game. I think the defense alone is going to shut them down, and that's going to be enough to cover the 14 points. So I'm taking Florida.
Yeah, the weird thing in this game is neither side maybe has a great offensive line. Tennessee right now, because of some of the unrest on its offensive line, that could be a tough matchup against the Gators' defensive front. I think you're making a pretty good point there. How about LSU trying to take over Vanderbilt Stadium much the same way that Georgia did a couple of weeks ago? Vanderbilt as a home underdog getting 23.5 points here. What happens with the Doors and the Tigers? Mike Griffith, start us off.
I'm interested because I want to see how bad LSU beats Vanderbilt. Did they beat Vanderbilt worse than worse than Georgia beat Vanderbilt? Probably not. In fact, I think they're going to cover with the exact same spread, 41-17. They win by 24 points, just like Georgia did, only they're laying it on. There's a reason Joe Burrow is leading the SEC in passing. It's because LSU wants to recruit. See, we can throw the ball around. All right, we get it. You're in Nashville. You're playing Vanderbilt. It's a beaten-down Vanderbilt team that now knows how bad they are. They didn't know that when they played Georgia. 41-17, and that's with LSU scoring late.
Mike giving a commencement speech for the LSU Vanderbilt game. He had to kind of try to talk himself into that at the beginning, and he finally got himself rolling there. He does take LSU when it's all said and done. Jeff Sintel, do you agree?
A lot of points. Is this the Joe Burrow show again? I do like LSU to cover those 23.5 points in Nashville.
Yeah, that's the sports writers I know and love, just laying major wood on the road in the SEC. They like both of the favorites there. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, 69% of the audience takes LSU there as well. So they're expecting a nice performance from the Tigers and going out and getting that cover. So we are 3 for 3 on the side of LSU here. Connor, is it this easy for LSU in Nashville this weekend? I'm guessing a bunch of Tigers fans make that trip much the same way that Georgia fans did a couple of weeks ago.
So what do you remember about the Georgia-Vanderbilt game? Specifically what the offense did that day and how the Vanderbilt defense played.
Yeah, listen, a lot of running the football, a lot of things along those lines.
LSU's thrown the ball really well so far to start this year, but they have not run the ball well a whole lot.
Good point.
And because of that, I thought Vanderbilt's secondary there played pretty well, all things considered. I think they did a good job. As good a job you can against Jake Fromm when you're outmanned by talent. And as you know, I just love a good home dog. And if you're going to give me 23.5 points, I'm probably going to be sweating there at the end because I do think there's a chance, LSU might want to try and take this from a 17-point game to a 24-point game. Give me 23.5 points. I'll eat those up all day.
So, Daria, I must admit that I'm a little bit tempted to join Connor on this just because it is a lot of points for a team at home that's eventually going to play well against someone, although Vanderbilt hasn't really done that as of yet this season. However, I'm going to hold off on that for two reasons. First of all, just generally speaking, I'm kind of high on LSU. And apart from that, I'm going to let the numbers speak for me here because the one thing that has consistently remained true is LSU under Ed Orgeron is a program that's just good against the spread. The old saying that, good teams win, great teams cover. LSU covers a bunch. They're 4-1 against the spread in their last 5. They're 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 road games, and they're 11-3 against the spread in their last 14 SEC games. So this is a program in the league, on the road, against whomever. They find a way to go out and cover the spread. It includes games like this against Vanderbilt. 23.5 is a lot of points for a team in LSU that doesn't need to send any kind of message. Just winning the game is fine. But Orgeron has been a little bit of a cover boy here. I'm going to take LSU minus the 23.5 to cover. It's a huge number on the road, but just because of LSU's past, I think they cover in this spot there as well. That puts the flow on the side of LSU. Dari, do you want to go with the flow?
Yes, I'm going with the flow. Just so you know, Vandy hasn't scored more than 10 points on LSU since 1991. So I think LSU is going to be complete control of this game throughout, and they're going to cover easily.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, I think that just speaks to it. This is a Vanderbilt team that has struggled and not going to come up big in this spot. And the same kind of talent disparity we saw with Georgia and Vanderbilt, a game which UGA covered, LSU kind of finds itself in the same spot here, although interestingly, a slightly bigger favorite than Georgia was a couple of weeks ago, but that's probably based on the fact that we've seen a little bit more of Vanderbilt since then. Now we roll on to a game that I do think is going to be pretty fun from a gambling standpoint, from a regular standpoint, probably not too juicy at all, but I think fun from a gambling spot as Ole Miss in the Grove hosts the ranked in the top 25 Cal Golden Bears. They travel into Oxford, Mississippi. Tricky spot maybe, especially for a team traveling west to east. Time zone, kind of a weird deal here for this one. Mike Griffith, start us off.
Cal is at Ole Miss. Who scheduled this game? Why? I don't know. It's at the Grove. There'll be a lot of partying. There'll be a lot of singing and dancing until the scoreboard runs out. And the Cal Golden Bears come away with a 24-21 win over the Ole Miss Rebels, who really aren't that good.
So here, Mike Griffith going with the Cal Golden Bears coming on the road as an underdog. He likes the team outside the Pac-12. How about Jeff Sintel? What do you think?
Goodness, this is the Bears versus the school that tried to claim the Black Bears mascot. I'm just going to go SEC home venue road test for Cal, and that Pac-10 competition, I'm going to take Ole Miss and those 2 points.
So Jeff on the side of the SEC with Ole Miss. Dog Nation Daily, listeners and viewers, split decision between our two riders. The audience for the moment will break the tie, and 71% of the audience takes the SEC school Ole Miss on this. That's probably not a huge surprise necessarily. Worth pointing out that that Ole Miss is the favorite, despite the fact that Cal is the ranked team here. That's going to be interesting, I think, for me coming up in a moment. But first, Connor Riley, not a great game in terms of comparison to some of the other ones we'll see this week, but can be interesting from a gambling standpoint. Where do you land on this?
So what does Ole Miss do well?
Throw the football, I guess.
I don't know. That Memphis game, they did not throw the ball well in that game. Cal plays great defense.
Yeah.
Limited.
Good secondary.
Great secondary. Jacob Eason had a real tough day throwing the ball against them. They actually, you see North Texas a week ago. They only win that game 23-14. But North Texas has a really good offense, really good quarterback in Mason Fine. He's better than Fine. I like the fact that Cal, I know I'm going to get great defense out of them. I don't think this Ole Miss team is all that good. Yeah, they beat Arkansas 2 weeks ago. Whatever. I know it's on the road. It's a West Coast team going east at an early kickoff. Cal has a known quantity here. I don't know if they should be ranked, but, you like to give stats a lot. They're 1-0 as an underdog this season, and they won that game outright in Seattle, beating Washington. Washington is a lot better than Ole Miss. Give me Cal out here outright.
Aaron Rodgers is not walking through that door.
They don't need him to.
Marshawn Lynch is not walking through that door.
Don't need him.
Deshaun Jackson is not walking through that door. That may be the only 3 Cal players I can name.
Demetrius Robertson's not walking.
Yeah, there you go. Demetrius Robertson is not walking through that door. Connor mentioned that they are 1-0 as a dog here this season, but they're just 1-4 against the spread in their last 5. I mean, Cal, despite the fact they're 5-2 straight up in their last 7. So they've won some games but haven't always covered. That's the story for Cal. But, Dari, here's what really matters to me on this. I have a weird mystic belief in the predictive powers of the AP poll. There are a couple of things that when you see them, it usually means something. When 2 highly ranked teams are playing, and yet one team is a huge favorite over the other, there's usually something to the favorite on that. We saw this a couple weeks ago when Syracuse played Maryland. When the unranked team is favored over the ranked team, there's usually something up with that. Maryland, the unranked team, was the favorite. They blitzed Syracuse. We have a similar situation here where Cal, the ranked team, is on the road at Ole Miss, the unranked team, and yet the Ole Miss team is the one that's giving the points. Now, home field advantage factors into this, but that's part of the story here. I think that Ole Miss is actually a pretty strong play as a 2-point favorite. I don't think Ole Miss is good, but I think the travel is tough for Cal on this in addition to everything else. I'm going to take Ole Miss minus the 2, and I actually really like this pick a lot. Dari, do you want to go with the flow?
I'm going to have Cal has a really good defense, and they've kept both their games. They kept both teams under 20 points, including Washington, which is actually a really good offense. I think their defense is too good, and that's going to win this game. I like Cal to win outright at Ole Miss.
Wow. So I feel pretty good about my pick on this, although Dari Riverside's me hard the other way there with Cal. I'm actually pretty curious to see how this plays out because I do like Ole Miss, but let's face it, I've been wrong before. Now, the next game we're going to get to, Texas A&M hosting Auburn, and admittedly, I don't have quite as strong of a feel on this game, although I'm looking forward to watching it, and I'm looking forward to hearing what our folks think about this one. Let me start once again with Mike Griffith as the Aggies play host to Auburn. Mike, what say you?
Auburn at Texas A&M. This is actually probably the most contested, most exciting game of the week. I can tell you Kyle Field makes a difference. It's unbelievable. It's a steel giant. It's going to be hot, the heat. Jimbo's going to bring the pressure, and Bo Nix is going to be looking for his daddy. He's not going to be there. A&M's going to win this football game. 27-24. Auburn covers the spread, but A&M wins the football game.
So he takes Texas A&M there on that one. Jeff Sintel, how about you?
I like Texas A&M in a big way, definitely more than 4 points hosting Auburn.
A&M as well for Jeff Sintel, Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers. More of a history with Auburn than A&M, although in this case, the audience goes with the Auburn side. Close, and to be expected, 54% of the audience takes Auburn. A little bit of a surprise there that the Dog Nation Daily audience likes the Auburn Tigers there, but by a 2-1 margin. The flow is with Texas A&M for right now. Connor, as I said before, both these coaches need this game bad. Motivation matters to me here, which makes it more difficult for me to make my pick. What do you think?
First off, love the under here. Don't even know what the number is. I think both really good defenses.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions on offense with both of these teams.
Yeah, both these quarterbacks. I mean, I want to say that Nix has struggled. Mond has definitely struggled. Nix is a freshman on the road.
Hammer the under here. I mentioned a few weeks ago, sometimes the matter guy wins. I think Auburn, it was the rumor this week that came out that they'd be interested in Bob Stoops if things don't go well with Malzahn here. I think Auburn has a marginally better defense, and while, yes, they are on the road, weird stuff has always happened in this Auburn A&M game where the road team actually has more success than the home team. Give me the 4 points. I'll sweat it out at the end with a late field goal here or there. Give me Auburn.
I think it's a pretty bold pick. I don't agree with it, but I think it's a kind of a bold reasoning. One thing about Auburn, Dari, they've been good against A&M. They're 4-2 in their last 6 straight up against the Aggies, but not so great as an underdog. Just 4-14 straight up in their last 18 when playing as an underdog, which means that they haven't pulled a whole lot of upsets. They are 5-1 in their last 6 against the spread, so some conflicting data there a little bit. Here is ultimately the thing that matters for me, though. I said both these coaches are desperate right now. Malzahn desperate to hold on to his job. Jimbo Fisher desperate to prove that he's worth $7.5 million, whatever it is that he makes. He's trying to build a program. But it's that last idea that matters to me here. I believe that A&M is on the verge of coming up as a program. I think it's ascending. I think one way or another, whether it's a quick fall or kind of a slow, winding fall, Auburn's on the way down. That matters to me in this game. Jimbo needs to give a scalp to his home fans. Auburn's a pretty good way to do that, especially given how tough how tough the Texas A&M schedule is overall. I don't feel great about my pick. I'm a little nervous about it. I'd love it better at 3 than 4, obviously, just given the fact that 3 is such a key number. But I'm going to take A&M, not with a bunch of bass in my voice, but I'm going to take A&M here, which means that's the flow, right? The flow is on A&M by a 3-2 margin. That puts A&M on the side of the flow. You're going to go with the flow, Dari?
I'm going with the flow. I'm going to take A&M -4 to cover. I think they have a slightly better defense. Playing at home, they have a more experienced quarterback, so you just have to give the edge to A&M. I think it'll be kind of one of those ugly defensive battle type games, but I'm giving the edge slightly to A&M.
Do you feel good about, you said slightly, do you feel good about your pick on this? Because if you told me.
Slightly. I feel slightly good.
Because if
not strong.
You know how like you do those confidence pools sometimes online? This would be of our card this week. It may be the game other than obviously Georgia that I'm the most excited about watching, but it's the one on my card I would definitely put as my least confidence. There are a few of these other ones, including one we're going to maybe do before we're done here, that I would put a lot higher in my confidence pool than A&M and Auburn. Sounds like you feel kind of the same way. And Connor, it sounds like even though you're on the opposite side of us, you don't feel great about your pick either, right?
No, yeah, I'm not going to pretend to have any strong inkling of how this game goes. I think all four, outcomes, A&M win, A&M tight win, A&M blowout, big Auburn win, tight Auburn win. I think all four of those are on the table, and I think all four have a pretty equal chance of happening.
All right, I do feel a little bit better about my next two picks. Let's stay in the SEC here. Let's talk about Kentucky after a heartbreaker versus Florida last week, going to Starkville to take on Mississippi State after Mississippi State let one get away against Kansas State. They are a touchdown favorite, though, 7 points against Kentucky. Mike Griffith, your thoughts on this game we see every year, Kentucky and Mississippi State, are crossover rivals. What do you think about the Bulldogs and the Wildcats? Mike Griffith, go ahead.
Kentucky's at Mississippi State. This is an interesting game, not one worth watching, but worth keeping up with, only because it's two pretty evenly matched teams. I like Bob Shute, the defensive coordinator at Mississippi State. I think he's brilliant. I think Kentucky, right now, they got that gut punch so close against Florida. You were almost there, and I'm taking Mississippi State to beat Kentucky 31-24. A couple of 6-7 win teams here.
Again with the push. I'll never understand. Is it that hard to take one side or the other? Although he did come with an eyelash of whichever game it was last week that he predicted to push almost came in as a push. So I guess you got to give him a little credit for that. Jeff Sintel, your thoughts on Kentucky, Mississippi State?
Woo. Fighting Moorheads versus another Stoop squad. I'm going to take Kentucky there with the points.
So in this case, he takes the side of the Kentucky Wildcats. So Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, 7-point favorite. Mississippi State sees itself as Kentucky. 61% of the audience takes Mississippi State here as a 7-point favorite, which puts the flow on the side of the home team, the Bulldogs, the favorites. Connor Riley, you want to weigh in on this one?
We were just talking about how not really confident we are in Auburn or A&M. I somehow even have less confidence in who might actually win this game. Both teams coming off heartbreaking losses at home. Kentucky knows who their quarterback's going to be in Sawyer Smith. With Mississippi State,
who's not bad, by the way.
Yeah, who was not bad. I don't think he was the sole reason they lost that game against Florida.
I don't think he was the reason at all.
He could have played better. With Mississippi State, there's some uncertainty with their quarterback situation from a week ago. I don't feel great about either of these teams. Just give me the points, and I'll take Kentucky and root for an underdog.
Yeah, see, I'm a little different than you. I like bad games when it comes to having a little bit of a clear perspective who's going to win, and I think there's something at play here. Let me give you a couple numbers. Kentucky is 4-8 in its last 12 games against the spread versus Mississippi State, which if you think about it makes all the sense in the world. For a long time, the West has been better than the East. So these two teams that play every year, it would make sense that Mississippi State would just have more talent because that's what the West has mostly done when it's played against the East. Even a team like Mississippi State near the bottom of the division, Kentucky's not much better off in the East. So that number means something to me. Also, Kentucky, for as much as they did a year ago, they are just 2-4 in their last 6 against the spread in SEC games. So they've struggled against Mississippi State. They've actually been a little weaker against the spread than you might would have thought, even though they finished top 15 a year ago. They got blitzed by Georgia, for instance, last November. Dari, I actually like my pick on this. I feel pretty good that Mississippi State as a 7-point favorite. I think they cover this number. I think Kentucky's the worst team in the SEC East. By comparison, Mississippi State's not good, but they're not the worst team in the West. I think this lines up and makes some sense. It's a little bit of a bigger number than I thought at one point in time I would have laid in this spot, but I feel pretty good about Mississippi State getting a comfortable win against Kentucky, which puts the flow on the side of the Bulldogs, right? Dari, do you want to go with the flow?
Yes, I'm going to go with the flow. I like Mississippi State as well. I mean, Kentucky almost beat Florida last week, and Mississippi State lost to Kansas State, and now Mississippi State's favored by 7. What that tells me is Vegas thinks Kansas State is really, really good, and it also means that they believe Mississippi State is pretty good as well. So I like Mississippi State to cover the 7.
Yeah, the analytics, the advanced stats and the stuff like that have kind of favored Mississippi State a little bit more than I kind of see with my own eyes from time to time, but it's at least worth paying attention on that. The other thing, Dari, is, I don't know if you're like me on this, if you give me a team that plays an emotional home game and then has to go on the road the following week, there's a huge emotional swing, I think, involved with that. Now, Kentucky lost at home last week, but they still gave a lot of energy away by playing in front of that crowd against Florida. To find themselves in hostile waters on Saturday, that for me is just kind of a knee-jerk instinct where you go from a big home environment to a tough road environment. I always am going to take a second skeptical look of you when you're on the road in that spot. That's something else for me that works against Kentucky in this game.
I agree, 100%.
All right, let me look at another SEC game, and I will tell you that I like my pick in this game, although I've gone on about face on it during the week. I mean, I have really changed my mind, but I feel pretty good about my pick on this now. It's South Carolina being hosted by Missouri. Missouri is a 9.5-point favorite. I think this is going to be a sneaky good game, which maybe gives you a little bit of indication of my pick here. This is not going to be a game you might want to miss if you're watching some stuff around your tailgate and stuff like that on Saturday. Let me start with Mike Griffith on the Columbia Cup, the two Columbias of the SEC. Mike, how do you see this one playing out?
South Carolina, Missouri. Now, this is intriguing because which one of these teams will emerge to be the bigger threat to Georgia? Now, Florida, you can say they are, they aren't. You're going to go down to Jacksonville. You'll see Georgia beat them by 20 points. I don't know how much of a threat that qualifies them as. But Missouri can be dangerous. If this game was in Missouri against Georgia this year, I'd be worried about it. It's not. Georgia's going to beat them too, just like they'll beat South Carolina. I'm going to take Missouri to win this game, 24-21. Derek Dooley with the trick play. It'll be on ESPN highlights. Everybody's going to say, look at this. Derek Dooley outsmarted Will Muschamp.
So plus the points, Mike Griffith takes the underdog, South Carolina. Jeff Sintel, what about you?
Missouri with 9 points to South Carolina. Wow. I'm going to take South Carolina and those 9 points. I think the test against Alabama and what they learned about their team and what they could do against the Crimson Tide helps them in the road venue. I like South Carolina with those points.
So I criticize these guys for not taking enough underdogs, but they've actually done a little bit more of that lately. Both of them on the dog there. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, 64% take South Carolina. Wow. We're on a clean sweep thus far for the dog getting the 9.5. Connor, what do you think about that?
Have you ever heard of the body blow theory?
Sure. Remind us what it is, though.
Didn't sound very reassuring. So sometimes in college football, when you play, a very big, physical, talented, tough team, 1 week, you lose to them.
Yeah.
The thing that you really have to worry about is that next week where you're so physically drained,
good point.
Overwhelmed. Do you know who South Carolina played last week?
Alabama. There's been a lot of research on this, too.
There's been a lot of research that suggests this. And not to mention, South Carolina was the wrong side last week. They got bailed out with a late penalty and an even later touchdown. I'm still quite upset about this.
Tell your story to somebody who cares.
With all that being said, Helinski going on the road, I believe this is his first road start.
Yep.
Missouri, yes, they lost to Wyoming early in the year, but they beat the brakes off a West Virginia team that actually might be okay. Give me Missouri here. Give me the 9.5 points. I just like this Missouri team a lot more than I like the South Carolina team.
I think it's an interesting pick. I think Connor's point about teams the week after Alabama, AL.com, for instance, has done some studies on this. You'd be a lot better off with a bye after playing Alabama than a bye before playing Alabama. That means something to me here. However, Connor also mentions Tyler Helinski. That's a quarterback that I actually really like. I could see him outplaying Kelly Bryant on Saturday, even on the road. The numbers in this game kind of scream South Carolina, too, both over the long haul and over the recent stretch. Carolina 5-2 in its last 7 against the spread versus Missouri. Better talent, seemingly, and using that to stay closer with the number. However, what's more interesting than that is that Will Muschamp, even though we think of him as kind of an underachieving coach at South Carolina, has actually been really good against the spread. 8-1 in his last 9 on the road, 10-4-1 in his last 15 SEC games, and 6-3 overall against the spread in his last 9. So somehow Will Muschamp is keeping it closer than the experts think over and over and over again. Physical Alabama, a little bit of a wear down from that, maybe. The problem is, though, is that Missouri's not a physical football team. So I don't think they get pushed by the Tigers too much. I'm not necessarily calling for an outright win, but right now I don't trust Missouri to beat anybody like this by double digits. I think that Muschamp's got to actually – I think he could potentially one day have a better program than what Barry Odom has at Missouri, and this is one of those days where that could be established. I actually feel pretty good about my South Carolina pick, Dari, although earlier in the week I probably would have been saying more on the Missouri side on this. The flow says the Gamecocks. Do you want to go with the flow?
No, I'm not. I'm actually going to take Missouri to cover the 9.5. Just so you know, Missouri at home has covered whatever their number is against the spread in 9 out of their last 12. I think they're a much better team at home, and as long as they don't turn the ball over 3 or 4 times, I think they should cover this.
It's a good number, and it's a good argument to be made. It's Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. You hear Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews. And, of course, one of the things you know about Dari is he loves the college football conversation. He likes the stuff we do here around Dog Nation. And, it's the same kind of fun and, friendly environment that R.S. Andrews creates. When you call them up, you're going to find that out yourself. They like to deliver smiles. As they've said before, story after story, they deliver smiles, and they can deliver a smile for you, too, if you're facing an air conditioning issue or a heating issue. We are coming up on the cold weather time of the year, after all. You want to make sure that furnace is ready to go. Plumbing, electric, all of that. R.S. Andrews can get your systems back to factory fresh specs, but you got to reach out to them right now. rsandrews.com, the way to go on all of that. So we're kind of rolling here. We'll get back to Georgia, Notre Dame in a moment. Let me do one more game before we get there. And when we have a big national game featuring ranked teams, we're typically going to talk about that here on Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews, and a fun one coming out of the Big Ten as Camp Randall Stadium in Madtown plays host to the Michigan Wolverines. Wisconsin right now a 3-point favorite over Harbaugh here. Mike Griffith, your thoughts on the battle from the Big Ten?
I think Wisconsin is the only team in the Big Ten that can beat Ohio State this year. I think they're the only ones. And Connor's shaking his head on the camera. Connor, I don't care. This is my pick. And I'm going to take the Badgers to win at Camp Randall. They jump up and down. The stadium shakes. And Jim Harbaugh doesn't know what he's doing. 5 years later, he still hasn't won the East. He's not one of the top 5 coaches. Wisconsin wins 30-20.
An animated Mike Griffith takes the Wisconsin Badgers. Jeff Sintel, how about you?
All right, Michigan is on the road. They're not playing Army this week in the Big House. I like Wisconsin to cover that spread.
Jeff Sintel also on the side of Wisconsin here. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, my guess is they don't like Harbaugh, although they do take him here by a margin of 58%. They're on the side of the underdog, getting 3. They'll take the Michigan Wolverines. A little bit of a surprise from the audience on that. Connor Riley, I know you've touted Michigan before during the offseason. What do you think about them in this spot here?
So, everyone loves throwing out numbers, and the big number this week, Michigan, under Jim Harbaugh, 0-6 as a road dog against the spread. 4 of those games are against Ohio State.
Yeah.
These Ohio State teams are way more talented than this Wisconsin team. I know Wisconsin hasn't given up a point yet, but they also haven't played a non-directional school. They beat South Florida and Central Michigan in those first 2 games. It's the first real opponent on their schedule. And, everyone in the world is on Wisconsin. They're ready to bury Jim Harbaugh. They're ready to bury Michigan. No one believes in Michigan this week.
Yeah.
But I believe in Michigan this week. Michigan doesn't just cover. They win outright. They win by double digits at Wisconsin.
That's a strong take. Daria will tell you that I think the people who try to bang on Harbaugh for being a bad coach kind of overstate the matter a little bit, although, as Connor mentioned, his record as an underdog is not great. I believe since he's been employed by Michigan, there's only one other coach in the country who's yet to win a game as an underdog over that span, so that scares you a little bit. But this is a guy who built up the Stanford program. He won as a 40-point dog outright against USC while he was on the farm, won 44 games in 4 years as the coach of the San Francisco 49ers. I think he's got a little bit of a track record. He's not a bad coach. I think that we overstate his failings thus far at Michigan, although he's certainly come up small in some big games. One more time, I'm going to hitch my wagon to Michigan. one more time. And if they don't come up in this spot, I guess I'm probably done with Harbaugh and Michigan forever. But in this particular case, I think as a 3-point underdog, they are pretty lively as a dog here. I'm going to take Michigan, which puts the flow on the side of the Wolverines. Dari, do you want to go with the flow?
I am not. Camp Randall is a tough place to go and win a game. Michigan has already been struggling to start the year. Middle Tennessee, Army, they have not looked good. They are not sharp. Here's some things to keep in mind. Wisconsin leads the nation in third down conversion. They also lead the nation in third down defense. They lead the nation in fewest penalties. They lead the nation in time of possession, total defense, and fewest first downs allowed. They are a complete team on both sides, very well balanced. The Badgers are going to win this game at home and officially put Harbaugh on the hot seat. And when Harbaugh loses to Ohio State at the end of this year, he may be looking for a job.
Boy, that's a great strong take right there. That makes that game more fun to watch coming up on Saturday. Can't wait for that. Finally, let's turn our attention back to Georgia and Notre Dame. The over-under, 56.5 is where that's been listed at for the week. Total number of points scored. You can bet over that or bet under that. Mike Griffith on those total points. Let me start with you.
62 points. This one goes over. Kirby probably doesn't need to score those touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but the backups are so excited, and Kenny McIntosh gets a chance to score another touchdown, another dead leg. The Irish are tired. They want to go home. It's hot, and Kenny McIntosh scores, and they go with the over, 62 points.
All right, so that's Mike Griffith going over on that. Jeff Sintel, over under for you on Georgia Notre Dame. What do you think?
I don't see a 42-20 type game. I see something more like 34-10, 35-10. I'm going to go under.
Jeff Sintel goes under on that. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, when it comes to the over-under, what are you thinking on this? 83% of the audience takes the over of 56.5. I'm guessing I know which side they think most of those points are coming on there. But by a 2-1 margin, the over favored over the under for now. Connor Riley, what do you think?
I said before, 42-14. Now, Notre Dame can't kick field goals to win this game. Notre Dame starts kicking field goals. That's where the over really starts to come into play.
Yeah.
I think it's 42-14. If my math is correct there, that is 56 points.
Yeah.
I'm taking the under. I don't feel great about it. But I think, Dari's point about this being a ball-controlled kind of game, I think that's certainly going to play out. Georgia's going to want to run the ball, maybe slow this game down a little bit. Because of that, give me the under.
Yeah, I think the coaching styles factor into this. I think now I'm on the wrong side of this compared to Dari, or the opposite side compared to Dari. I think Notre Dame's inability to move the ball on the Georgia defense comes into play here, and I don't feel great about the under, but I do think it's the right play here. So by a 3-2 margin again, the under is preferred over the over. Dari, where are you on this? You want to go with the flow?
Yeah, I'm going with the flow. I think it's going to go under for everything I said. I think this is going to be a strategic game. They're going to try to control the clock and run the ball. So I think it's going to be under. I'm just curious. Your number was 42-14. That puts it at 56. You're not going to go for the push?
Yeah, he says you're going to do a Mike Griffith and go for the push on that. That's pretty good, Dari. I like that a lot. Now, my understanding is you're going to the game this weekend, right? You're going to be between the hedges. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. We got a big group of people going. Can't wait. Super excited. We're going to get there early. We're leaving around 10 a.m.
Well, listen, I think everybody that's going better hopefully be leaving early because my guess is the traffic is going to be outrageous. Obviously, the crowd in attendance, everybody's expecting a huge event, a huge atmosphere. Dari, I'm glad that you'll get a chance to be a part of that with all of us this upcoming Saturday. Good luck to your picks. Obviously, we'll hope for some good luck on ours as well as we try to improve our record. We'll be back here again next week at the same time to react to what did happen, look ahead of the upcoming week. And by the way, don't forget about our friends at R.S. Andrews. It is still hot outside. It's been 90 degrees a lot. That means when you go to bed at night, you want that cold air hitting you on the cheeks. The way that you do that, you got to get your system, make sure it's up and running the way it's supposed to be. Trust me when I tell you, you will not be smiling if that's the case in your house. But once you get that system back to factory fresh specs from the folks at R.S. Andrews who show up on time, they do the work that's promised for the price that's promised, you'll have a smile on your face after that. Because story after story, R.S. Andrews has been delivering smiles for a long time. Dari, thanks for being with us here. Look forward to talking to you again next week. Enjoy Athens this weekend, and as I said before, good luck to those picks.
Yeah, definitely. Go Dogs.
That's right. Dari Payro there. To all of you, thanks for being with us here on Go With The Flow presented by R.S. Andrews. We'll speak to you again next week as well.